Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for being with us here today for our Illuminate series focused on wisdom. For anyone that doesn't know, SoulAdvisor runs these sessions every month, and the word illuminate is also aligned with the full moon, which is all about shining a light. And what we like to do is shine a light on a word that we see aligns with wellness. And in particular, today, this month is about wisdom. So I'm really excited to delve deep into what that means for us, and excited for you to be here, and also very honoured for the people that are joining in our associations that will be facilitating the conversation. So have a beautiful time. We always encourage everybody to go on mute for now because we are recording. But if you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and in time we'll actually invite you to come in, because this isn't a formal presentation. It's all about us sharing our collective wisdom and allowing for discussion. So I'm going to pass you now over to Kate, who's going to open up today.
Thank you very much, Dev, and hello everybody. I just want to show you where I am. I'm down here looking over the Shoalhaven River on Yuin country, and that's just to contextualize what we're doing today. So before we start talking about wisdom, I'd love to acknowledge country, and I invite everybody who would like to just settle where they are and let their eyes close and feel your mind stretching way out to the horizons, following the contours of the land and the waterways, following the contours and the textures in your mind's eye, the textures of the bush, the ground, the texture of the air against your skin, and really contextualizing yourself as part of the landscape in which you find yourself. And I'd like myself to give deep respect to the elders that have looked after Yuin country, where I'm sitting right now. Deep respect and honor all that they've done to keep this land and these waterways as healthy and pristine as they have for millennia after millennia. And I'd also like to honor all the elders who've looked after the lands that you find yourselves on today for the same reason. And I'd also like to honor all of our collective ancestors that worked so hard to bring us here in this flesh form that we are, and to honor all the joy and all the ceremony and all the love that's gone into bringing us here in our bodily form today. Thank you. And now I'd love to introduce those people who are with us today and who are on the panel. Now, as Deb said, whilst we have an amazing bunch on this panel, we'd also love to invite all of you to chime in at any time. So chiming in on the chat, chiming in just by voice. This is a bit of a yarn circle. This is a bit of a chat. So it's communal, and we've all come here from with our own wisdom to share. So first up, I'd love to introduce Helen Callanan, who's the convener, founder, organizer, the person behind Preparing the Way, and has got a really beautiful central role in bringing End of Life Doualing to all of our attentions, and really helping us to understand what it is to die appropriately and well in this country. So I'm so looking forward to hearing what Helen has to say about what we're discussing today. We were to have had Jantine Hurst also coming along to be part of what we do today, but talking of wisdom and age, her dad has been is in hospital, and so she's had to be there with him. So, and then we've also got Sara Jones, yay, who is amazing and has, along with Jamie Thomas, been the founders and the conveners and chief dishwasher over at Wayapa Wuurrk for several years now. Wayapa is an amazing discipline, and I'm going to let Sara talk of it because it's much better that she does. And accompanying Sara, somewhere along here, we have Jem Stone I saw pop in to take Jamie's place, because Jamie has got his dad in hospital also. And also Jem has got her mum in hospital. So look, there couldn't be a more appropriate time to be talking about what wisdom is and how age begets wisdom or can. Blessings to all your dads and mums and everybody else's dads and mums, if they're with us or even if they have passed on. And yeah, I'd like to just introduce Helen, first of all, to talk a little bit about what Preparing the Way is. I know a lot of you know that already, but just to hear her contextualize where Preparing the Way is at the moment. You're on mute, Helen.
I so rarely mute myself. So you can hear me now, okay? Thank you, Kate. Thanks for the warm welcome. And hi, everybody. And I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation on the land, which is where I am today. So Preparing the Way started in 2014, and in answer to requests and more requests for end-of-life doula support. A lot of you have heard of birth doulas. So we're working at the last breath, not necessarily the first breath. And I've been doing this work for a long time, and end-of-life doula really is an emerging role here in Australia. It's very much more established in the UK, USA, and Canada. However, there's more and more demand growing, and we all know that there's a lot of service gaps in the current conventional care system and systems and its various modes. And so how do we restore control, capacity, and choice to people who are facing end of life or who want to make their planning? And, this role has sometimes been, if you like, a little brushed aside as a bit sort of woo-woo and out there. And to that end, we really realized that it was absolutely necessary to create a recognizable qualification. So to that end, we've really had a massive achievement here at Preparing the Way with creating the world's first a certificate in end-of-life doula services. So there's no other government-accredited end-of-life doula training in the world. And we're very, very proud of that. And the first one starts in September. So there's a few places left for anyone who wants to get in. So the point of doing that is really about giving the power back to people to die at home, on country, whatever home is for them, and that they can have the supports behind them to make their choices and be where they want to be, and not, death's known to have become a very medicalized experience, and it's not. It's a deeply personal, private, family, community enterprise, as is death, and one of our greatest teachers and wisdom bringers. So I feel very privileged to be a part of this conversation. Death has been one of my greatest teachers, and so I really look forward to sharing with you today. Thanks, Kate.
Oh, thank you, Helen. It's just too exciting. If I had one spare breath, I would be joining that training for sure, but I'm hoping that it will go from strength to strength. I'll be there.
It will. It's a Monty. It's a done deal.
Lovely. And so just to let's also ask Sara and Jem, perhaps you would like to co-introduce yourselves and what Wayapa is all about.
Beautiful. Thanks for that, Kate. And I too would just like to acknowledge the beautiful Gunai Kurnai country and its traditional custodians that I'm zooming in from today. And also in that acknowledging Jamie, who is Gunai Kurnai, and he's actually with his mum today in the hospital, as Kate explained. So he apologizes for not being here, but because he is in where he's at, this is an even more poignant discussion today. And I love what you were saying, Helen, about what end-of-life doulas are all about, because it's so important, for honoring that process. Wayapa Wuurrk is an earth connection wellness practice that Jamie and I co-founded back in 2014 now, which we were the first Indigenous, we were the first known Indigenous wellness modality that was certified by the International Institute for Complementary Therapists. So just like Helen, we're very proud of the fact that that we were certified, and really important to acknowledge that Wayapa is It honors First Nations wisdom of looking after country as a starting point for well-being. So we talk about earth, mind, body, spirit well-being, and without the earth, there can be no well-being, because it is the earth that sustains us. So it's a reciprocal relationship, and we need to respect her and take care of her in our daily actions to be able to create well-being, true well-being. And if Mother Earth is sick, then we're sick. And that's just the way it is. And we're certainly experiencing a lot of that. Certainly over the last couple of years, we've all been through that and still going through it. We've been, as we said, we've been going since 2014, and we became an approved training provider with ICT, so we could train up Wayapa Wuurrk practitioners to help us share the messages of Wayapa as a practice. And one of those amazing practitioners, we've got over 250, but one of those amazing practitioners who is also a Wayapa trainer is Jem. So it's a privilege and an honor to share space with Jem today. I'm very grateful for her to step in and help rep Wayapa today. So Jem, over to you if you wanted to say hello.
So much, Sarah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kate, as well. And I also will just take a moment to just acknowledge where I'm sitting at my mum and dad's house on Wuurrrk country in Albury, and I just wanted to acknowledge the care and connection from the elders and the ancestors of this land, as well as over the Murray, which is nearby, and over there it is the Wavaroo and the Doodaroa people. So just acknowledging all the connection that's here around me as I start with your beautiful starting meditation, Kate, to look out to the horizons. So yeah, where I am, I can see over that Murray and over to the traditional lands on the other side of the river. How fitting that, Helen, it's lovely to hear you speak, and the service, I'm firsthand experiencing with my mum and dad as we speak, the need for this kind of work in the world. So I really hope that we can connect, and maybe you already have an amazing practitioner in this area where I am, because I think it would be such a valued resource. I know we've sort of looked at, the only options so far that we've found is either palliative care or, hospitals. So I think there's got to be that in-between space of someone that's just specialised in that field. So I'm so grateful you're doing that work. As Sarah said, I am a Wayapa Wuurrk practitioner, and I'm also a trainer as well, which is such an honour. There's only about 3 of us, apart from Sarah and Jamie, that train new practitioners. And the reason Sarah and Jamie had told me that they wanted to start trainers is because, more and more people are wanting to learn about this work, because it's not limited to First Nations people. It's an earth connection practice for everyone, but based on that wisdom of, 100,000 years of knowledge on this continent, but certainly an invitation for all of us to look at all of our ancestry from around the world and how we can to really tap into that cellular memory that we all hold within us, and how we can integrate that into our modern lives, so that ancient wisdom into our modern lives. But as Sarah said, first and foremost, it's about, the ancient knowledge of earth being the starting point for our well-being. And for 20 years, I've worked in the wellness space, and it's something that's always left out of the equation until I found Wayapa Wuurrk, or original knowledge. So I think it's just something, and as Kate and Sarah know, I spend most of my waking hours bringing this into wellness spaces about, coming back to the earth and sitting with the earth as we make our decisions, and bringing that back into our realm of, wellness. So I think it's just something beautiful. And I think talking about, illuminating, these conversations, we're about to move into the full moon tomorrow. So there's going to be a lot of illumination through the darkness. And they're the type of natural cycles that Wayapa invites us to remember that we're never ever separate from. And so those kind of natural cycles with the sun, the moon, and all the other elements around us are not only going on around us, but they're going on within us. So it helps us to align with those natural cycles so we can, really truly align with life. And yeah, it's a really beautiful way of being. So I invite all of you, if you haven't experienced it, hopefully you will get to soon. So that's enough from me. I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to put myself back on mute, Kate, and just let you know there is an OT that's coming at some point while I'm on this call. So if I step away, I'll be back.
Jem, it's never enough from you, but thank you very, very much for sharing. And I think there's so much that can be said about wisdom, but it's the cycles, isn't it? It's the cycles of the seasons. It's the cycles of our birth and our living and our death, and our birth and our living and our death. Those cycles that start to bring wisdom, start to increase our embodied experience. And there's quite a big difference, really, isn't there, between knowledge and wisdom when we think about it. Like, most of us have our heads crammed with knowledge. It's packed in between the ears from an early age, beaten in there, put out in examinations, regurgitated, etc., etc. But I'd love to hear a little bit from you, Helen, about what your feeling is about, you said that death is one of your biggest teachers, and I'm assuming that that's not knowledge, that's wisdom.
Well, probably both in reality.
Both.
But just speaking particularly about the wisdom is, you just mentioned the cycles of life. And I think one of the biggest wisdoms that's come to me with death as my teacher is that death is actually all about, or dying is all about living. When we're working with people as a doula, we're focusing on people living their best possible existence right up until their last breath, and then on afterwards in the care of their deceased body and their body disposition and the care of the family. So we're looking there at continuity, right? So one of our principles is about continuity of care. So it's not just, I do the palliative care bit and then I stop, or I do the funeral bit and I stop, or I do this bit or that bit. It's like, no, as a doula, we are going through all of those cycles with people. I think there's one part of it there. The other thing is getting back to the cycles of life. So if death, we live life in the West like it's life versus death, right? Big boo-boo, because death's a 10 out of 10 stat. It's coming to all of us. It's not something you can win a battle against, contrary to a lot of the language that's used. Oh, they lost their battle. Like they failed some way, So, and so many people, and I see for some people, some of their greatest fear around dying is it's like I failed life in some way. I got sick. That's a failure because people judge you when you get sick. Everyone's got a bloody opinion about it. Sorry, I swear. Everyone's got an opinion about it. And so you failed in some way. People are ashamed of getting sick. What is up with that? Right? So there's a lot of judgment around it. And then to die is seen to be some other level of failure. But reality check, it's a 10 out of 10 thing. It's coming to all of us, whether we like it or not. And what about if we were to embrace death as one of the chapters of a full life, right? And we approached it that way. That has us be embracing rather than pushing away and resisting. So I think that's one of the big things there for me. But that death is a chapter and that it's all cycles. It's all cycles. And that it's not something to be afraid of. It's just, we just need a cultural shift in our heads to really start to embrace the cycles, Yeah. I could wax rhetoric for days, but I'll stop there.
No, but it's so beautiful. And that is real wisdom, isn't it? It's the one of the things that happens hopefully for us before we die is that we age. And that's also, you know, when you talk about the shame of sickness and not being well, it's also, there's a lot of shame around that aging process, isn't there?
Yeah, unfortunately.
And it's so ridiculous.
Mm.
It really is.
Can I say something to that too, Kate? Because we
Sorry.
talk about that a lot in Wayapa, actually, the aging process, how, you know, even just reframing the, you know, the words in Indigenous cultures, elders are actually revered, you know, they're really valued, and their wisdom, as you said, it's not just knowledge, it's been integrated, and it's through life experience, and it's really valued. Whereas in disconnected systems and modern, you know, way of being, that to see someone aging is almost too confronting, and all of our advertising around us tells us that, you know, it's a bad thing and we don't want to engage, and you know, and we do everything to fight aging. And again, that disconnection from death as the natural part of that cycle. So yeah, it's such a shame, and I think this is where, as you said, Helen, you know, to see that not as a failure, but yeah, that's just what the disconnected systems around us are telling us all.
Our systems are not well, but hopefully by conversations like this, we'll bring them into some kind of a well state again. And I think you're right. In a traditional culture, in an intact culture, I would say, then veneration of our elders is a big thing. You know, in Japan, they have living national treasures, who are people that have had a lot of experience of one particular way of, you know, one particular art form or whatever it is that they've contributed. And we just, you know, I think that there's a lot of not wanting to engage in this particular conversation around the begetting of wisdom and about how essential people of age are, because it takes time, doesn't it? You're not born wise, or are you? I mean, maybe you.
Well, I don't know about that.
That's right. I agree. I think that one of the things that has happened is that we really have disconnected from our understanding that we are nature. We're not separate from it. Even the disconnection is an illusion, because the reality is that we can't actually disconnect ourselves from it, because we're surrounded by it. We are nature. Everything is energy. So you know, once we understand that we are nature, and we go you know, and understand the cycles of nature, then we can understand that death is very much a cycle of nature everywhere around us. And that from that can also bring, you know, renewal, you know, of things like, you know, we often talk about, you know, the tree, you know, the tree is constantly dying, and parts of the tree, you know, with the leaves falling, you know, seasonally, but through those leaves falling, or those branches falling, then they create new life on the floor of the forest, you know, with fungi or insects, so there's this constant cycling, and death is so much a part of nature, but it's because of that disconnection that we've created this fear around it based on the programming from outside, and, you know, rather than, you know, really leaning into it and saying, you know, how can we be living life well, through honoring the process of death. And I think one of the other things that's happened in society and in, you know, disconnected systems is the fact that we don't have the ceremonies and the rituals around our cycles, our natural cycles. You know, we don't, you know, in First Nations, you know, there was huge amount of ceremony around sorry business. You know, Jamie has been going through sorry business himself recently, with the passing of, you know, Uncle Archie recently, you know, and a number of other elders. And sorry business is a really important process in that grieving and that's bringing that ceremony back to that transitioning to the next cycle. You know, so I think it's about bringing back those connection, you know, ceremonies to honor those cycles that will help us to be able to, you know, move through the programming to get back to you know, what it was.
And deep in that ceremony is I mean, I know that ceremony sometimes for sorry business can take weeks and weeks and weeks, and I understand also there's a whole lot of different parts of that grieving that goes on in sorry business. The last one being, well, this person performed this role, so who is now responsible for that role, and how can we strengthen and hold that? So I guess there's two things there. One is, that the way that we celebrate and allow someone's passing to be wholesome is really important, because that performs the bedrock for the society, like then society keeps moving on and on and on into its next cycle. And by keeping that strong culture, no matter which culture we're from, if we can keep that really, really strong culture, it's a holding, isn't it, for the children to come into that environment and to learn and to be held by that wisdom. And I think you're right. It's tricky, isn't it? We've lost a lot of it. But I think maybe is there a role for end of life doulas to be bringing that back into focus, that celebration of a life and the cyclical nature of what's happening in a death?
I absolutely think so. And there's a number of doulas on today, and I'd be really keen to hear what they have to say. Well, one of the things we do in our training is we talk about that one of our primary responsibilities, and I think it's this for any citizen, in fact, is education. And so, and on one hand, we say that's because this is an emerging role. And, as Julie Fletcher is on today, hey, Jules, as Julie said to me once when she first heard about the doula role, so Julie's got a deep history as an RN and an entrepreneur. And so what Julie said to me, she said, Helen, I can't believe in all my years, I'd never heard of doula. And this was only a couple of years ago. And she said, we need to get doula as well known as nurse. Now, I just think of when that's happened, and that's the mission, one of the missions, we've got a few, that we're on at Preparing the Way, and all of the doulas are on, is getting doula as well known as nurse. And you only do that, right? Through educating, having conversations, holding little death cafes and talking about this. And, Jesse Williams, who used to be the CEO of the Groundswell Project, who are all about death literacy and who are the founders of Dying to Know Day. And we're in Dying to Know Day month this month. And so, this to me is a shout out to that as well. And Jesse said to me, we don't need to normalize death. There's nothing more normal. What we need to do is socialize it. I think that was really insightful. And to me, that's how we change the culture. It's not by banging on about all the things that are wrong. That's just, if you like, adding fuel to a fire that's already got quite a lot of combustion, thanks. Look, what about if we take that away and we start, was it Gandhi that said, be the example you want to see in the world? Was that, I've probably got the wording.
It was Gandhi.
Yeah,
be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, that's it. Be the change you want to see. So to me, it's our responsibility as citizens to create through conversation, through example, through the work that we do, that we're living true to our passions. And, everyone that I've met who's come before the training, we've trained over 500 people now as end of life doulas. Every person who's come to our training, almost without exception, says, I feel called to this work. And I think, and that's true about following our passions, whatever we're passionate about, if it's the land, it doesn't matter what we're passionate about, but when we're passionate and we speak for something, we educate for something, I think that's where the power is in anything we do. And that to me is how we bring the wave of change. It's not about resisting and banging on about what doesn't work. We all know it doesn't work. Let's not put any more fuel there. Let's focus on what does and speak high for that, Yeah.
I think you're a great example of somebody that's going to age well, Helen.
Well, I'm not right. 63, I'm not bad.
I say that because you have a strong sense of purpose, and that's really a missing thing for a lot of us as we move into old age. We're told 65, you've retired, there you go, off you go on a cruise ship, or whatever else it is going to be. Whereas, the traditional role for an elder is full of responsibility.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't have more responsibility. You're there to hold those that are coming through and to
Yes.
provide an example and use whatever tools you've got available to you to pass on that knowledge,
100%.
that wisdom.
Yeah.
Oh, being an elder. I think, you know, it's, I don't know what you think about this. I'm just thinking of Stephen Jenkinson's book when he talks about, yes, there's getting, being of an age, and then there's being an elder, and they're very different things. And this, they used to be that people had all these examples of what elderhood looked like. So as they moved on in their wisdom journey of getting of wisdom, as they moved on, they could see these other people up ahead who had that wisdom and were venerated and looked after and praised and held for that wisdom. Whereas sometimes that's missing now because we've kind of, you know, I don't want to say it, but I think we've really, really devalued that whole age group to a large extent in mainstream society. You know, there's a million different exceptions to that rule, but there, in general, it's been a very devalued piece of the life cycle. So that's terrifying as you grow towards that part of your life, because you're looking ahead and going, well, where's the example of how I pass on that wisdom? You know, it has to keep moving down the line. So yeah, I'd love to hear what anybody actually, just not just our venerated panelists, but how about everybody? How do you feel about that? Do you think that we have devalued that part of our life cycle? And what are the dangers of having done that? Or do you think that's not really true?
Cheryl, you're on mute, sweetheart. Take yourself off mute.
I organised an education forum for Dying to Know Day and had it on Monday. And look, now I can look back and say it was very successful in that, you know, I had 25 to 30 people there. But a lot of the times leading up to it, it felt like I was pushing a boulder up Mount Everest. It wasn't an easy road. And often when I would actually even talk to people of a group that would, one would think, be quite interested in, it was almost like that I was the Grim Reaper, you know, and and at times it was like, go away, and it was really difficult. But having said that, the feedback I got from the people that actually did get there was incredibly positive, so much so that, you know, I 2 days before I did it, I said, I will now really next time I even contemplate doing anything like this. But I came away thinking that it was actually a very good opportunity to start to actually just get people talking about this. So I guess I just wanted to say that what was not an easy road proved to be one that I'm moderately thinking about contemplating again, you know, this time next year. But
go for it, Cheryl.
It was a challenge.
Go for it, Cheryl. Go for it, Cheryl.
Yeah, so powerful to go through those hard yards, because somebody's got to do it, don't they? Yeah.
Kate, I remember in my diploma sharing of a story around traditional Chinese medicine, and in particular Chinese families. And as we know, in that structure, the mother is very revered, and to the point that when the oldest son is married, she moves into the house and she's seen as the head of the house, not the wife, until such time as the mother passes on and the wife passes up. So there's this sort of, in a way, something to look forward to, is to actually get to that place. And the interesting thing for me was looking from a wellness perspective, was that here in the Western world, often a woman will get to a certain point where we're hit with premenopausal or menopausal symptoms and all those things, because we feel like we're now put on the shelf. We've gone past the childbearing stages and we've got no purpose, so to speak. Whereas in that particular culture, there was none. They had none of those symptoms. So, you know, I suppose from that perspective, it's a great example of where one culture actually does allow for the elder to have a place, to have a role and purpose, and for another to actually not only feel that they haven't got a purpose, but their whole physical body starts to demonstrate that as well through the things that we actually experience here in Western society. So I always found that quite an interesting way to actually show it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's that incredible kind of loss, isn't it, that a lot of women experience, because the things that we're revered for in being a woman is the beauty, the youth, the innocence, the child rearing, and yeah, I know that a good number of my friends, when they hit the 50 mark and ended up taking antidepressants and a whole lot of other things to help them deal with the reality that they were no longer young. It's a terrible thing. Yeah.
And as I said, I do agree that not age doesn't automatically mean you're wise. And there can be young people with wisdom and vice versa. But I do feel that there is a lot of experience that comes with life and experience and age. And it is a loss to society, because you can actually offer things that perhaps you've taken as just part of your growing up, that other people are still taking those first steps. And so you wonder why our society has gone that way.
Well, one of the bigger causes, I think, looking at it from here, is we've stopped being a storytelling culture. We sit there in front of that damn television, newspaper, radio, and absorb other people's stories, people that are paid to tell us stories. But, you know, a lot of us have fallen out of the habit of sitting around the fire and telling story and being creative and finding a way to actually share where we've been and who we are and what we think and all the rest of it. And I wonder if that's something, if anybody else thinks that that's a factor.
I'd love to chime in on that for a sec. I think, so I agree with what you're saying. We're all about input. We're all about, we're ingesting, but we're not necessarily digesting. And, you know, because to me, I know from my own life, like, you know, I think of some childhood experiences I had between 7 and 11. You know, I was raised in the bush. And so the nearest, school for me was 100 Ks. So I used to go to boarding houses and boarding school for the first, from 7 through to 16. And so I had a lot of experiences in those things that, in my opinion, shouldn't happen to a little person. However, they're very shaping, those experiences. But so I had all of those things. I ingested all of those experiences. But it wasn't until I was more grown and a young adult that I then started to get counseling and therapy. And that helped me digest those experiences. So then out of the digestion comes the wisdom for me, right? So I wonder if it's not the same now. Not only are we just ingesting, but we're just, but pooping it out the other end without any qualitative evaluation of anything anymore. You know, we whinge about those things. We go, they're dreadful, and we want more of that because it's not those things. You know what I mean? It's not discernment, I think, has also done that. And I think so that goes back to that storytelling. No, that's just my view. It's what I've seen. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we're talking about, and we talk about it a lot in Wayapa, is about decolonizing our systems. And, you know, looking at all of those things that make us feel disconnected. And, you know, it's things like, you know, aging, it's around, you know, the hierarchical systems that are in place, you know, for, ancient ways. It's, you know, and First Nations mobs, there's, you know, as we're talking about, there's the yarning circle where everybody has value, everybody brings contribution, you know, and everybody's valued for where they're at in life, whether it be, you know, honoring young kids, honoring, you know, people who are hunters and gatherers, and honoring the elders. So everybody has a role and a responsibility in contributing to the collective whole, to the big village. So all of those systems support well-being. So, you know, those are the things that we talk about all the time, are what are those what are those natural systems that support well-being and living life well, that have been, ripped away by the programming or the colonized thought that we're living in today. And I think that, those are, it's great conversation to have around, elders and aging and, distraction, because a lot of the things that we're dealing with in today is that programming of distraction. And we're constantly plugged into this system of the system that honors all of the material ways of which continues to distraction. So, thinking of Indigenous people's view, or connected systems versus disconnected systems, we talk about things like education, health, community are all looked at in disconnected systems as a cost, as a liability, whereas in connected systems they're all honored, for the collective whole and well-being. Jem, I can see you nodding your head a lot here. You wanted to jump in.
Look, just completely agreeing with you, Sarah, as you talk. Obviously, I've had to step out for the last 10 minutes and missed a lot of what you're talking about, but to come back in and just even just hearing the tail end of what you're saying, those colonized ways, we've had to keep up. We're all carrying that busyness as a trophy, and really knowing that a lot of our work, a lot of our lives, asking us to keep going and not really honouring those natural cycles. Part of decolonizing is really slowing things down and knowing that there's times that things are going to ebb and flow, and there's certain seasons where we need to go slow, and we need to check in with our bodies and think, okay, sure, our job asks us to be 9 to 5 every single day. However, how can I do things that slow down because this is what my body's requiring? And these are the Indigenous ways. And, as Sarah said, sitting around in a yarn circle, it is one of those places where everybody contributes. It's honouring that, we all come through different pathways, and that community way that's held within a yarn circle is that everybody brings those different gifts. So to be able to know that there's not one way of doing things. We certainly are open to realigning with the central point of that wisdom from our elders, connection through all different knowledge systems that come and sit together and share that value and that knowledge. So yeah, I think decolonizing, a few people have issues with that word and what does it really mean. It's kind of this taboo word, but it's just about recognizing that that's not, nature never hurries. One of my favorite quotes is, nature never hurries, yet everything gets accomplished. But I really believe that we're living in disconnected systems, if we want to call them that, disconnected and connected systems. And disconnection looks like keep going until we burn out, and we carry that as a trophy piece, that we're always busy, and certainly not good for well-being, and it's not aligned with those natural cycles at all.
And I don't think it's wisdom. It's not wise. It's not wise. And talking again about that thing of age and wisdom, a lot of people, as they get into their older age, are put out to pasture. So they're they tend to spend more time with the television. My mother used to call the period of life that she's in now, i.e. 86 years old, not her dotage, but her anecdotage, I remember when, and this happened, and, and it's that thing that you're talking so beautifully about, Helen, which is the digesting. You've ingested your whole life, and then it's the digestion, and you need to have somebody who'll listen, not only yourself, to do that.
Kate, I noticed Sally Cant had a hand up before. I'd love to hear what you've got to share, Sal.
Sorry, I'll just unmute myself.
Yeah.
I was just interested in the sort of the not sharing of the stories anymore. And I hear that all the time. I work with families generally post-death, but a lot that are prior to death. And I just think there's either a devaluing in the stories, or people just don't want to take the time to listen. And I hear it all the time that people will say to me, I don't know what to share with you because their story wasn't interesting, or they haven't done enough in their life to be interesting. And that just absolutely baffles me. That and I'll just give you an example. I've been working with a family this week. The lady who died was 58, and her two sons wanted a very simple ceremony because they said, we don't know enough about our mum to give you the information, and her life wasn't interesting. And I was just stunned and sad. And it took me a lot to actually get them to open up to what she had done, or go and find out what she had done from her sister. And I do wonder about that. Is it the person themselves that doesn't think they have an interesting enough life to share the stories with their family, or is it the family that just don't take the time to sit and listen to the story of the elder people in the family, no matter how old they are?
Yeah.
So it's and it really, really scares me when I'm speaking to young people. Let's say I'm a celebrant as well as some of the other things I do. When I'm trying to write a story for a couple who are getting married, and they might be in their late 20s, and they'll do the same thing. They'll say, but our story's not interesting, Sally. It's very boring. And it just worries me that people think like that.
It's one
and it
of
doesn't
those
matter how old they are, they've still got a life.
Sally, it sounds like, again, it's one of those disconnected things of what our conditioning places on what is a successful life. You know, if we've,
but it's
if we've had a wonderful career,
got to have a successful life.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas, the coming back to the simplicity and the beauty and valuing and knowing how to tell those stories. Yeah. The most simple lives can be told in beautiful ways.
Oh, absolutely. And it just worries me about what people think what's success.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I have learned as I've gone along, because I had parents who thought success was about having a great title in front of your name. So I started with that and got my bachelor and headed into managing businesses. And I got about halfway through my life and I thought, sorry, but it's crap. That is not what success is about, in my opinion. And I started to think about what's important in life, and, have led my own path, not my parents' path, but my own path since then.
And I also say it may also indicate, how little value is placed on listening to elders' stories. Yeah, as well. If her two children couldn't really have anything to say at her funeral, shows how often they were asking questions. And we don't see that in First Nations cultures a lot. Stories are how knowledge has been passed on for thousands of years, and it just seems to be that disconnect in our modern way. Life's too busy to sit down and listen to someone's story, and if it's not up in lights, and it's not important.
Yeah, look, I volunteer for an organisation down on the Bellarine in Victoria, and we have 50 volunteers, and it's Compassionate Hearts on the Bellarine. And one of the most requested thing that a volunteer can do is just sit and talk. Not go and wash their dishes, not go and take them to an appointment, not to bring food, but it's just to sit and talk. So which really says to me that other people aren't listening. They're not taking the time. I understand that some families, have lots of reasons why they can't. I do understand that, but it's just across the board that, most of all of our volunteers go to a place for an hour and they just sit and listen.
Yeah.
Do you think that comes back to the decolonisation principle that Jem and Sara were referring to then? Because, people don't think they have time because most people are running scared, trying to keep it all together, trying to keep themselves financially strong, trying to do all the myriad of the incredible horror of the paperwork that is part of life these days, to try and be everything that they're told that they should be, etc., etc. And it literally is that people don't have time. And so how much is time a part of the wisdom getting?
Yeah, it's huge.
Oh,
So
sorry, Melanie?
Melanie was going to chime in there.
Sorry, hi. Yeah, and also Samantha had her electronic hand up as well. But I'd like to just add to that I've been trying to do this process with my mum for the last probably 10 years. She's 80 now. Every time I see her, or we make a bit of time, I don't see her very often, but we make a bit of time, or phone calls. So, and I had got some prepared questions, and just tell me a little bit about yourself, and, really trying to get to know my mum. And she would always remark with, "Oh, but why do you want to know, dear? Oh, but I haven't done anything interesting in my life, dear. Oh, but why would you want to waste your time listening to that, dear?" And I was so stunned, but, and I've persevered, and I've explained to her why I'd like to know. And so it is sort of, I really hear what Jem, and what everybody's talking about. And I wish that I had that as part of my culture that I'd been brought up with, that people did take the time and really make the effort to say, "I'd really love to just sit and chat with you and listen to your story." And yeah, we've sort of plugged away at it for the last 10 years or so. And I've got a little bit of a book going, just a handwritten, not a handwritten, but, just notes. But I think it's really important, but it's very hard when you're up against a person who's like, "Oh, but I'm nothing special." You're like, "Well, you're special to me. You're special to lots of people. And we'd love to get to know you better." So yeah, it's hard when there's resistance to it.
Yeah, great, Melanie.
Can I respond to that, Melanie, quickly before Samantha? You've been there really patient. As well, it's about us detangling from those expectations as well, of asking those questions. Sometimes just allowing time and sitting and listening. We don't have to be necessarily told a story. Just sitting and having time with our elders. I know sometimes I've gone and sat with elders, and, when I've been told, "Oh, you're going to have an opportunity to have some time with uncle such and such or auntie such and such," I'm like, "Wonderful, I'm going to get to learn so much." And I've literally sat with them and they've said nothing. But on those days, I've learned more things than what somebody could tell me just by being with them, watching them, observing them, actually having time with them. So I think, again, that's another part. It's, we're all living under these colonized systems. So we get excited and we want to ask questions. And certainly, yes, that's important to a certain degree, but just even having that time of getting to know the person in different ways as well, I think is so important.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jem.
Yeah.
Samantha.
Where did she go?
Sorry, there's so much I wanted to respond to, but I know we're talking end of life, but I find that whole storytelling is at the beginning of life, yeah. And as a colonized or white person, we seem to have none of that culture, none of that, none of the storytelling at all in the first place. I'm trying to sum up one thing and then lead to the other. It's like we have a lot of isolated families, very mum, dad, 2 kids or something. There's not a lot of cousins and things like the Asian families and the Indian families, all that have culture and have this hierarchy, the Indigenous community have like roles and places. We don't have that at all. Like as a white Australian, I often feel like I lack in culture and tradition and everything, that I don't have a big family, and it's always this yearning for something. And when you're talking about the storytelling, I'm thinking like my children, when they were fairly young, before I started reading bigger books to them, they'd say, "Tell me a story, Mum." And so I'd make up these stories and and then after a while I was like, I don't feel like my stories are good, and I can't think of anything. I lack in imagination for these stories, and I felt like that kind of dropped away. Even though they still wanted it, I didn't feel capable of giving an entertaining enough story. So I read books all the time. And even now, I think if someone asked me what's my story, I would be like Melanie's, not as boring, or that poor woman who died, she didn't have a story. Sometimes I think, well, there's not much to say because of the inability of being able to story tell properly. And I know there's natural storytellers, but I feel like if we were more exposed to, or even maybe what we need now is storytelling workshops and things to try and get people to, you know, at different stages of their life, how to storytell with your children, how to learn as an adult and into old age. Because and the old age part, I feel where, you know, we old people are supposed to be wise, and I can see that many of us don't think they're wise, including myself. Sometimes I see cranky old people and they're just, you know, they probably have a reason, they might have an illness, etc. They might be lonely, but I feel like when you live this isolated life and you kind of retire, you don't have a role, you're not helping anywhere, you don't have connections, there isn't any community. So yeah, you do just sit and watch TV or do boring things, and really, honestly, it sounds awful, I think you become unwise. I think you become an old person that doesn't have much to offer to society because you don't have any roles, you're not doing anything, you're not learning anything, and how, you know, some people, how are they supposed to expect to do that at an old age? They're already there, you know. I feel like it sort of comes from such a young age, and there's just so many areas where, anyway, that's my big
great.
story.
I hear you talking about putting patterns in place from early on and having that wisdom or that mirrored, so that you can look up and see, oh, you do it like that, and we haven't really had that. And, you know, again, Stephen Jenkinson in his book says, if you wait for the wisdom of age to take over, sometimes it won't. Which is a pity, but it's probably true. You know, we need to find our way back to models that will encourage that. And I totally agree, Samantha, you know, like if we could establish a storytelling model where it wasn't a high pressure thing. I remember those kind of workshops always used to terrify me, like, oh, I don't want to get up and tell a story, how terrifying. You know, it shouldn't be terrifying. It should start from the age of 0 onwards, where we listen in. And, you know, I know with my kids, every fourth night it'd be an opportunity for them to tell a story, and they're gobbledygook at the beginning, you know, when they're 2 and 3, but they got better at it. And that they had a lot of experience of telling stories because they went to a Steiner school, which was a very story-oriented way of growing up. And they are eons and light years ahead of where I am in terms of storytelling. Like, they can really tell a good story, and I'm still trying to catch up. So yeah, I think I totally agree. Well, look, it is 1:29. I want to know if anybody has burning things to say about wisdom before we end up.
I want to just quickly. Sarah, you go.
The only thing I was going to say was that I think one of the things that we do, you know, one of the things that's coming up and it's something that we talk about a lot in the Wayapa Wuurrk family, is that, you know, it's around understanding that the society or the systems that we live in now are constantly telling us that we're not enough. Everything is not enough, and it's always defined for us as to what is enough. You know, and with the natural, when we go back to natural cycles, we are enough just in being. So that's what, you know, changed my life around to understand my importance as, you know, just one drop in the ocean. But without all of those drops, you won't have an ocean. So it's understanding that we fit into this bigger picture all the time. And that all of the natural cycles are telling us how much we are enough. And it's all of these, you know, program cycles, systems, disconnected systems that are constantly telling us that we're not enough, and driving that in every aspect of our lives, from when that veil starts coming down, when, you know, being little kids, and we start, you know, being programmed into that space. So it's about deprogramming those thoughts around that we are inherently enough because we're a child of Mother Earth. Sorry, Jen.
No, beautifully said, Sarah. And I was going to follow on with something like that, but in adding to that, just with what I heard you say, Samantha, you said, you know, you're almost at that loss of culture, you know, you don't have that other cultures have. But in Wayapa, we share ways in which everyone can connect to that. We actually do hold that within our cellular memory. We hold at least 6 generations in our DNA. So our ancestors call us from the inside out. So there are ways that we can activate that cellular memory, and that belonging comes because, again, as what you said made me think of a beautiful elder I've learned from has said, you know, we're living these individual lives, working jobs to get money to buy belongings, yet what we're all yearning is belonging. And I think that is that's something that, you know, there are certainly ways through connecting to the earth, connecting to natural cycles in ourselves, that we can find that belonging, because as Sara said, we're already, you know, amongst it. The wool's just been pulled out over our eyes, and we've forgotten that we're not separate from any of it.
Oh, thank you so much. That's wisdom. Yeah, I've just been really enjoying the amount of wisdom in this little Zoom room today. And, you know, it just has really, I didn't know that it would go that way, but it's really highlighted the role of story and how important that is in the wellness, in developing a well-balanced culture. So as we work over here at SoulAdvisor with all of you to define what real wellness is, we're going to have to somehow incorporate storytelling into that as well, and that capacity as a strength. So I invite again anybody who has anything else to say to speak now. Great. And we have recorded this, so this will be appearing on our SoulAdvisor YouTube station, and we'll be sending the link to all of you who are here once it's up and happened. Yeah, but if you want to go looking beforehand to see what else we have in there, what other recordings we've done, what other panels we've brought about, just go to SoulAdvisor _, isn't it, Deb? Have I got that right? I'm pretty sure. SoulAdvisor _
Yeah, SoulAdvisor _.
Yeah, and on YouTube, yeah. And we'd really love all of you to join us, to join this community. A lot of you who are here today, including you, Helen, and you, Jem, and you, Sara, are already part of our practitioner community. But anybody who's out there doing end of life dualing or anything else that's of in the wellness arena, we'd love you to join us. So we'll also send you the link to how to join us and hope that you might take it up. It's free to join, and it's about really having these kind of conversations and progressing what we all know to be true. So thank you. Thank you. And Deb, would you like to finish?
Look, I just want to acknowledge everybody today that have come today. Obviously, thank everyone on the panel for your sharing of wisdom, but also everyone that has joined into the conversation. I always love us coming together each month and connecting. I know it's not in a physical space, but energetically we have connected for an hour and we've shared a lot of stories. And I suppose for me, in just hearing about us owning our worth and knowing that we are worthy will allow us to continue with those storytellings. So I'm really honour the actual end of, was it the day that you mentioned, Helen, about the Dying to Know
August
month?
the 8th, yeah.
So thank you very much for that. I know that we've actually just finished NAIDOC week, and that was the reason we had you here as well, Sara and Jem. I hope all our family members are in beautiful hands and beautiful love. And I want to just thank everyone for being here today. So
Thanks.
have a beautiful week.
Thank you, Deb and Kate, what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye,
very
everyone.
much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.